for more on the U.S. college football industry, let's bring in Gene Wang, a sports writer at the Washington Post. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start out with some context for our global viewers.
Sure.
When it comes to U.S. college sports, they see this unparalleled amount of money being poured in.
Yeah.
Why do we see that here and not anywhere else?
Well, college football is a very uniquely American. If you look at the schools that are participating in the Deep South, you have Alabama and Georgia, very, very American. Other schools that are big in college football, Michigan, Ohio State, also big in the Midwest. So football is one of the sports that we claim as our own, and it's been ingrained in us since we've grown up, and people just can't get enough of it, especially the NFL. But in college this year, they've done a great job narrowing it down to 4 teams to compete for the national championship. So you have the added suspense of that as well.
Now, you have this unique situation where you have an amateur sport that's really generating as much revenue as a professional sport does.
Yeah.
Are there any other sports that compare at the amateur level to the way that college football does?
The only one that's close is men's college basketball Final Four. I believe 2 years ago, there was a study commissioned by Arizona State. The Final Four in Glendale, Arizona, generated over the course of 4 days upwards of $300 million. You're talking about 4 schools that were there: North Carolina, South Carolina, Gonzaga, and Oregon. So you have fans from those schools traveling to Arizona, staying there overnight, staying at hotels, going to bars and restaurants, and it's just a huge boost for the Arizona economy.
And so, as you mentioned, when you have these teams, these fans really diverging on these places for these huge championship games and these bowl games, what sort of revenue, what does that bring for the local economies where they're headed?
Well, if there was another study for the college football playoff in Arizona a couple years ago that estimated they brought about $120 million. And it's different because you have one game. When you have the men's basketball Final Four, it's 2 games over a bunch of days. This is one game. This game tonight, the Arizona Convention and Visitors Bureau is estimating about $100 million. But some economists, according to reports, have said it's going to be considerably less than that, maybe in the neighborhood of $65 million, because you have 2 teams that are in such close proximity to the stadium. Georgia, University of Georgia, is 70 miles away. They're not going to have to come and stay at the hotels in Atlanta. Alabama is 200 miles away. That's a drive, a 3-hour drive. They're not going to have to do the same thing or go to restaurants or go to bars. So you figure they're going to go there and drive home. So the revenue's probably not going to be as high as if you had 2 teams from, say, the West Coast coming to Atlanta.
So is there anything they could do to perhaps offset the losses that they're going to see from not really having that much when it comes to hotels and things?
Well, the Visitors Bureau is insisting that they're going to have fans at the game who don't have tickets hanging around the stadium. They want to be part of the experience. So they're going to go to the restaurants then and the bars then and spend money there. But that's still only one day and maybe a night. It's not over the course of an entire weekend.
As you mentioned, this is a very uniquely American phenomenon.
Okay.
So what's being done to generate more international interest and perhaps even recruit more international talent to this?
But there's initiatives of streaming the game worldwide. Obviously, that's a big deal. Everyone can watch it. There are alumni from these schools all over the world. It's not like the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Super Bowl is the greatest sporting event in America, and that is shown worldwide. The NBA Finals shown worldwide. The NBA is certainly more of a worldly game than college football, but they are taking initiatives in terms of the different platforms where the game can be seen to kind of spread it all over the world.
And what do you think would be the tipping point to really generate more global interest in this sport?
The fact that they have 4 teams and it's down, and so you know exactly who's going to compete for the national championship makes a big difference. There's a lot of clarity, and I think that if you look at the men's Final Four, that's a global sport. People watch that around the world. I think college football is moving in that direction because when you have it narrowed down, you have teams that everyone knows, everyone knows Alabama, everyone knows about Georgia, and like I said earlier, they have alumni all over the world. So there's certainly a movement toward getting college football to be more of an international sport, although I think ultimately it's going to make its most money in the United States.
And just quickly, who would you say end up being the big winners or losers when you have these huge championship games on the line and all the money involved?
Well, the schools, for certain. I mean, you mentioned how much money is involved with each school getting there. The coaches, the players get their profile raised if they're going to be in the NFL draft and they play well in this game. They stand to make a lot more money. And also the fans and the cities, too, to some extent. I don't think as much in this case, but in general, the host cities do make a lot of money when you have teams from far away coming in. But it's mostly the schools themselves that get the most revenue.
And this is a very unfair question. My colleague, Elaine Reyes, huge Georgia fan.
Okay.
Who have you got, Georgia or Alabama?
I've got Alabama probably by about 10 points because Alabama does not lose games like this. They are a dynasty in college football. They're just a factory. They churn it out every single year. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend your friend.
You've broken some hearts. But so good having you on. Gene Wang, sports writer at The Washington Post.